Let's talk curation, a series in partnership with GDB. Today, I'm answering the $1,000,000 question. No pun intended. How much budget should I spend in a test? Or what's the test budget? Let me answer this question for you in two ways. First, I'm going to consider two scenarios. One, you've never ran the campaign before. Okay, so it's brand new, fresh fresh campaign that you're testing in your DSP. Two, you've already ran the campaign. You have performance and data to make a decision. Okay, so scenario number one, you've never ran the campaign before. And again, if you're just joining, I'm answering the $1,000,000 question in terms of how much budget should I add in a test, especially when it comes to curated audiences or curated deals. If you are in media math, a DSP I'm getting more and more comfortable with. If you are in media math, you're able to allow your campaign to hold that budget. Hear me out. So you have your strategy, you have a budget for the full strategy. You set up using some infillion segments in market here and there. Those are first is zero party segments, by the way. I mean, data, by the way. And so everything that you select within the media math platform and the infillion platform, you're able to see. And so you're going to test out internal audiences. You can test out third-party audiences if you want to, and you can test out some created deals. Okay, scenario number one, never run the campaign. We understand the strategy. Let's say it's for automotive clients. Buyer is for Toyota, and then BMW buyers. Those are the two audiences I'll use for this example. And so I reach out to GDB and say, hey, GDB team, I have these two audiences I'm looking to target for this strategy with this KPI. Overall budget is this, but not all of this is for you. What would you recommend we start with? Or can you send me some curated audience? GDB is going to be like, you know what? I know the infillion platform really well. You're already running in-market segments with this infillion data, infillion audiences. Let me send you other types. And then they'll start sending other types, or they can layer in markets as well. It depends. And so they're sending to you, and now you're running it. Okay, so that's scenario number one. You have not exactly selected a budget for each. What you're doing is separating the strategies, each of those tactics within their unique ad group or line item. We call it the strategy within Media Math. Okay, so please don't combine everything into one. That's not going to help answer that question that I'm answering, the test budget. So now you're allowing Media Math to allocate the budget based on your KPIs, how you set it up in the DMP and your DSP, and then in the next few days or the next weeks, you can see, okay, this is not getting enough budget. Let me go ahead and add another 10%. This is getting enough budget. The CPA is maybe higher, but it's just getting started. Let's see how it goes. Maybe adjust frequency. Okay, so that's how you'll know. And then at the end of that flight, you can determine like, oh, these two tactics have only ran X amount of budget. I wonder if with more budget, we can increase way more in terms of performance and KPI again, because we are KPI focused here, and then see from there, right? But ultimately, I'm not asking you to wait until the end of the campaign. I'm asking you to maybe let it run for 2-3 weeks. And within those 2-3 weeks, then add some budget to see if it performs. Boom. Now, scenario number two, you ran the campaign. You have each of those curated deals, curated audience specific to the criteria you shared with GDB, running in their singular individual tactic and ad group or line item, whatever you want to call it. Okay. You don't want to miss deals. That's not the way to go. Okay, let's start there. And so you set it up correctly. You know that each of those audiences have their own respective audience. You run it for a while, you optimize based on the KPI, and then you realize that, these are actually running really well. You go back to your client and say, because I have trimmed some of this underperforming inventory, which is while you were optimizing outside of the created audiences or within, you remove supply that just didn't perform real well, right? The MFA, you do the manual work, whatever, boom, 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 it's out. You are making room for more of that budget, right? That's not being spent on underperforming inventory to be spent into those highly performing inventory, supply, and audiences, okay? And so now you can do the math and say, you know what, since 10% or 20% of my budget used to be spent in these excluded inventory, now that 10% is going to go towards that. So you can manually add that 10%. You know what I mean? So you can do the math with if I'm excluding this inventory because it's not performing, how much of that money have been spent there? Maybe move something along that, right? The average or the bulk of that budget, automatically move it towards the curated audiences or the audience that is performing well. Okay. That's a way to define a test budget, because now you can go back and say, hey, originally we had 15% of the overall budget towards curated audiences. We've optimized our performance based on underperforming supply. We excluded that. That's allowed us to move an additional 20% of that budget. So now we're going to allocate 25%, right? Because 10 plus 15, boom. And so that's how you can kind of suggest a new budget to test this curated audience. And now if you've tested a handful of curated audience to start with and it's working well, then you want to give that information back to GDB or to your data partners that you're using for that particular curated deal, okay? So that is how you can answer the question, how much budget should I test in this deal? As a recap, let's just summarize here, okay? As a recap, if you're starting the campaign, again, allow the machine to do it on your behalf. You know, I can speak confidently that Media Math using the brain does a really good job at allocated based on KPIs, based on performance, based on inventory, okay? But it's very important that you set up the audiences separately. Like honestly, like guys, just it's two different audiences separated, okay? Now, the second scenario I gave is if you're already using some of this, if you're already running the campaign, use the data that you have as an insight. I gave you the example of if you're trimming out, cutting out, excluding inventory, supply, site lists, app lists, SSPs, you name it, audience, data partners that are not performing based on your strategy or your KPI or your spend, okay? Then whatever budget was spent, that budget you can start allocating it back, or the percentage you can just go ahead and increase it into your curated deal. So you fund more there, or into the strategy that's performing real well. So that's the way to do it. And at the end of the campaign, when you see that, you know what, that curated deal actually worked really well, you let the GDB team know, so your curated audience partner know, this performed well. Can you do this again, or plus some more, or better, or what else you recommend? The team is going to be like, you know what? Let me just layer some different type of audiences that are indexing contextual here. The intention metric is there. The viewability is at this. Anyway. And so you add that into your insight and you go back to the client and say, we could literally continue performing by X amount of good KPIs that you're aiming if we add an additional this, because throughout this campaign, we had to shift this budget. But if we add even more budget, maybe it'll, increase. So that's how I recommend to answer the how much budget should you spend in a test. You let it run to start with. But again, setup is important, okay? And the DSP is also important because, okay? And the second scenario is if I'm running based on the optimization, how much money did we waste on this and how much money can we recommend here? And then maybe add that same budget on top of the total budget, if that makes sense, okay? So it's always hard to explain certain programmatic things or how to optimize without showing you. So take a moment to take a breather after this video, even though it's a little bit above 5 minutes. I'll have some clear steps in the bottom, like in the show notes, to help you maybe put on a sticky notes and understand how to make that decision or how to answer that questions really, really well. Okay. My name is Ellen Parker. See you on the next lesson.